It is February, it's March 3rd. The sun is shining, the snow is melting. We told you there was reason for hope back in February, and we're living into it now that spring is knocking on the doorstep. So I welcome about 120 and growing friends right now into the house. We welcome you into our party. We welcome you back into our family. I thank you for the highlights and the shares. And if you somehow missed Meredith's first encouragement, just breathe. You know, with the headlines and the chaos and the divisiveness and the cynicism and the anger and the readiness to judge and be right all the time, how cool to come together and just breathe and celebrate life, and celebrate community, and celebrate the truth that life is rarely easy, but it is good, it is sacred, and the best is yet to come. So I'm glad to be in the party with you, letting new friends in. Now I'm letting my buddy Trevor in. And all of you, I welcome you into the community. So Meredith asked me for a highlight in the last month. I'm going to share today three quick ones. First one from the speaking road. This one was from Boston. I had an opportunity of speaking up in Boston just last Wednesday, I believe. And occasionally, as I begin a keynote, I'll begin by sharing where my first keynote speech was. And it was not to Sumo Logistics. It was not to some big event. My first keynote, as some of you may know. In fact, this is an in-class essay, in-class quiz. Who was O'Leary's first client? Type it in, please. Meredith, read I said, this is a committee group of people. All
They've
right.
got your
Now they're
number,
coming in
John.
so fast and furious. I can't read them all, but all right, guys, I love you.
Good thing
I'm
you didn't
grateful.
offer a prize. We'd really be in trouble.
Right. I'm going to go back in time, and whoever got it in first, I'm going to send you a box of Girl Scout cookies, my treat. So stay tuned on that one. In the meantime, I made a joke about it, and it turns out that one of the individuals who heard the joke was moved by it and the story, left the conference area, went up to the hotel area, 13 floors up, got a bag of Girl Scouts that his daughter had sent with him, brought it back down, and gave it away to a new friend. So, in front of 400 people gathered from around not only the United States, but the world, because we are global family friends, the leader of the event handed me a box of Samoa cookies that I could then bring home to my family. They called them caramel delights, but we all know in our heart of hearts that those are indeed Samoas. So that was a cool moment, Meredith. 2 days later, I had the opportunity of speaking in South Dakota, which was terrific. Spoke to Women of Ag. It's a leadership group gathered from 6 different states, women who are leaders within agriculture. And at the end, one of the women who approached me was not a 93-year-old, although there was one in the room, was not a 52-year-old, although I sat next to one at lunch. This woman in ag, this leader in ag, was the ripe age of 7. And so little Anna walked up to me at the end, and she told me that she thought I was really funny, and she loved me. And that whether you are a comedian or you are an ordinary human being, when someone approaches you, puts their arms around you, gives you a hug, hands you a little love letter, and tells you that they love you, that is a deeply moving thing. I love the note. I love the clear joy in my face, but cover up O'Leary's face. You'll do far better in life if you do this now. And look at little Anna's face. What's the word that you see when you look into her face? Type that into chat for me. Meredith, what's the word that you are seeing and others are saying they see?
Well, she comments, no surprise, but the word of the day is Joy. Pure joy on that little girl's face.
Just joy. In spite of the storm, in spite of the headlines, in spite of the unknown, in spite of the struggles, in spite of being less than literally, please listen to this community, in spite of being less than every other person in the room, if you want to measure it by many, many statuses, age, wealth, significance, all that stuff, in spite of all the struggle, this woman, joy. It's a choice, and we make it on the front side of this call. We're 11 minutes in now, still reviewing the last month, but it is a worthy review to celebrate life. And so let's celebrate one more thing. Meredith asked for one. I gave her 3. These 2 were from the road. This one was from last night. You're like, O'Leary, what are you doing? Are you not a better photographer than this? To be honest, no, I'm not. But let me tell you what I'm taking a picture of. This is my daughter, Grace. And as you are about to see, they are not the most athletic basketball team in St. Louis, Missouri, or any other city or any other region, but they love each other and they have fun playing basketball together. So they're in the semifinals game. They don't know how they got there, but they're having fun playing ball. And at halftime, they're down 21-5. One of the girls is crying, everyone else is just kind of a little discouraged. And then the coach mentioned to them something at halftime. And the picture you just saw was what happened when a team makes a free throw to go ahead by 1 point, ultimately winning the game 28-27. This roaring comeback victory that Grace and the girls on this team celebrated together. You see the coaches high-fiving that little number 24 on the bench when the game was won. Doesn't matter to her. That same look you saw in Anna's face, you see in Grace's face. This look of joy. So I asked Grace on the drive home, what did coach say to you guys? What turned the tide, man? What turned the tide? And this was the quote. And I'm not just talking to my seventh grade girls right now. I'm talking to our on fire community right now. Stop looking at the freaking scoreboard, family, and let's start having a little bit of fun together. Just start having a little bit of fun together. So let's roll into a recap of last month and then a forecast of where we're going next. For those of you who party with us on the podcast, and I hope you do, if not, you're missing out some on grade A material. But those are some of the guests we had last month. And then Meredith, before I turn the page, you are an avid podcast listener. Is there a podcast from last month that you think was absolutely worth pumping the brakes and tuning into?
I really loved the conversation with Jason Waller, and I'll tell you why. I went in with a lot of preconceived notions about that guy. I remember when I was like in college and high school, maybe. I'm not sure when he was on reality television, but I thought for sure there was nothing I was going to be moved by that he shared. And I just was reminded how short-sighted any thought like that is when you're talking to any other person across the table from you or listening to their story. And I just thought you did just such a good job of connecting with him as a dad and sharing how vulnerable his rock bottom and subsequent recovery was. I just thought that was a great, great episode, especially if you have struggled with addiction or know anyone else who does.
Right on. Thank you. And he and I are speaking tomorrow. These folks, the cool thing about having them on our podcast is they become buddies. So Jason is genuinely a humble man who has made every mistake in the book twice, learned from them, and is continually striving to redeem not only his life, but to make the lives of those around him better, which is part of what we do on this call. So let's turn the page into someone who made my life a little better. Kim Seal, my friend from Southwest Airlines, I love you. And I had the opportunity of seeing you earlier this month. Returning home from that trip, though, I was not able to fly on my favorite airline, which means I know I had to cheat. I flew home on a different airline, which means I had to figure out how do I get from this terminal to the other one. It's a crisis moment because it's 12:20 in the morning. It's 27 degrees outside. It's bitterly cold. It's windy. It's nighttime. There's not a lot of activity up at Terminal 1 in St. Louis, but I'm trying to make my way over. And so I wait about 5 minutes outside. Eventually, a little tram pulls up. This is a tram for a rental car carrier that will remain nameless. I told the gentleman my problem. I had to get over there. I knew this guy had to circle the airport. So I said, can I just sit with you as you drive around the airport and then I'll jump out when it's my stop? And his response was, no. I'm like, all right, I get it. So I got down from that little bus, waited for the next one. The next one is another car carrier. This is one who you're supposed to park your cars at, and it's off site. And I told the guy my same story. I've been outside now for 15 minutes. It's obviously very cold. There's no one around. Do you mind if I just come in here, warm up? And as you circle the airport, eventually, when you get to that stop, I'll jump off. And his response was, that's not my job. I'm like, all right. So then I get off his little bus. We're almost there, people. Hang on there for a moment longer. The third bus pulls up. I knock on the door, walk up the 3 steps, explain the situation one more time. And this guy says, that's not my problem. Like, all right, welcome home, O'Leary. Get off that bus, grab my little bag, grab my briefcase, and I just start walking into the darkness. It's cold, it's windy, it's miserable, it's not the safest of areas if I'm being direct with you on all fronts. I'm about to walk through an area that has no sidewalk. It's essentially almost like a side highway. It's very fast-paced traffic, people in a rush to get wherever they're going, and I'm dragging my bags down this thing. I'm about a quarter of a mile down the path, and then I hear this little honk, and I turn to my right, and that's when I see this little shuttle. A window rolls down, and I hear the voice say, "Baby, I don't know where you think you're going, but it's too cold to get there tonight. Get in." So I get in this little shuttle. I'm going to show you a picture of this woman. It turns out her name is Asia. And Asia is a shuttle driver for the Marriott up by the airport. She just drives this path, picks people up at one terminal, then another terminal, then to her hotel, wash and repeat for an 8-hour shift. And I happen to be one of the individuals she picks up. She's never picked up anyone on the side of the road before, but now I hop into her shuttle and we start talking about life. We talk about her family. I talk about mine. Talk about my 4 little kids. She talks about hers, one in middle school, one in grade school. She talks about living downtown, not always loving the place where she lives, but loving the region where she lives it. So we connect. And at the end of the conversation, I say, "Asia, can I just take your picture and share your story tomorrow online?" And she goes, "Baby, I would love that." So I did. I took the picture, put this thing online. It goes up at like 7:45 in the morning the following day as I slowly warm back up at home. And this post becomes one of the more viral posts we've written in the last year. This is what happens very quickly. This is on one platform, but 2,500 likes, almost 400 comments, almost 300 shares. This is real activity. But more than just the stuff, it's what people are saying. It's the genuine appreciation for people not saying, "No, not my problem, not my job," but people seeing an issue that is not their issue, making it theirs, and saying yes to someone else in need. So we get comment after comment. Some of you on this line after comment, some of your friends and family on this line after comment, hundreds and hundreds of comments. That's super cool. But then it gets even better. Then people start calling out her employer. So often in social media, we see the negative side of this. "You need to fire her, man." Not this time. You see people saying, "Man, Asia Shuttle is awesome. Marriott Hotels owes her a raise." And then there's like people who jump on this bandwagon saying, "Right on. Like she is just such an awesome employee." Well, eventually this makes its way back to her boss. His name is Ryan Kahns, works as the manager at this hotel, thanks us collectively for sharing this, for bringing it to his attention. And Ryan subsequently has now hosted a party celebrating what great selfless leadership looks like in action. And in front of the room, a room filled of leaders, was none other than Asia. She is now being celebrated not only locally and regionally, but nationally by Marriott National, which is remarkable. There's also an organization right here in St. Louis that celebrates those among us who serve as ambassadors of hope. Sometimes they sweep streets, sometimes they drive shuttles, sometimes they walk with a stethoscope. But these are people who are ambassadors of hope, making a difference where they are. So Asia is now being celebrated as such an ambassador of hope in our community. So cool. So deserving. But there's one line I want to call out before I shift into today's content. It's near the bottom of the post. And my friends, this is what every one of our On Fire for Good ambassadors has in common. See the need in front of you, not as a distraction from your day, but as possibly the very reason for it. So I'm going to be quiet for a moment and encourage all of you to type that into chat, because this is like the tattoo moment. So just go ahead, see what's on the screen, and then type it into chat. Type it into your consciousness. See the needs in front of you, not as a distraction from your day, but as possibly the very reason for it. See the needs in front of you, not as a distraction from your day, but as possibly the very reason for it.
You see all those coming in, John?
I'm grateful for all of them.
It's like a study guide in high school. Remember, you just had to rewrite every note you took in an effort to kind of get it on your brain.
Yeah,
That's what we're
it's still
doing now, people.
it's still how I operate, and it's my hope as we send back out the chat after this call that this reminds you of one of the primary things that the best among us do, the Asias among us do. A woman you're about to meet in 4 minutes named Brianna. What they do just naturally, or they choose it. They see the need in front of them, not as a distraction, but indeed, and this is how I think Jesus operated his mission, as possibly the very reason for it. So, family, let's roll. We've been doing this work now for 15 months together, celebrating on fire for good champions. This is kind of the Mount Rushmore. We don't just have four, we've got 14 up there right now. And we are about to add the 15th face to the wall. I'm excited for her. But before we add her, I do have a question for you. Who is someone who sees the real you? And how does that person make you feel? In an alley with everyone driving past me and with the three people I had a human experience with, they all told me to get lost. No, not my problem, not my job. And then a shuttle driver who has more places to go than picking up strangers walking down an alleyway sees me, isn't distracted by it, but sees it as the opportunity, maybe for the very reason she was working that night. So, who is someone who sees you, the real you? How do they make you feel?
Don, we have some really cool answers. Lots and lots of people have commented their partner, spouse, husband, wife, life partner. Many people have commented their children. But I want to read some of the ways that people who feel really seen, how that translates emotionally. I feel peaceful. I feel beloved. I feel cherished. I feel like I belong. I feel comforted. I feel another cherished. I feel loved. I feel like truly beyond loved is loved beyond love. Raylene
Mm.
said that. That should surprise you none. I feel grace. I feel valuable. I mean, these are not um, feelings we can manufacture ourselves. They have to be like reflected back at us.
Mm.
And to realize that we all have at least one person in our life who can feel this way is really, really, who can help us feel this way is really cool.
So Meredith knows this about me, and if you've been partying with me for any length of time, more than 15 minutes, I think you understand the reason why I do my work is nothing about ego or building, a wing onto this building. Our work is to keep people alive. At the end of the day, we know the stats, 1.4 million Americans in 2024 attempted suicide. And then Asia shows up and picks you up and reminds you that you have value, reminds you that you're seen, reminds you that the best is yet to come in spite of the struggles of the day. And the struggles are real. We don't ever hide from that. The struggles, the loss, the agony, it's real. But so is the reason for hope. And sometimes we need someone like that to show up in our lives. And we've got someone who is that person in the lives of others. I'm going to bring her onto the stage with us in a minute if I can figure out how to use Zoom. And if not, Meredith, get ready to go to work. But Brianna Morales, if you are on the call, unmute yourself, walk into the classroom and join us live.
I am here.
Before I even introduce my friend, would you all, by a clapping of your hands or a little bit of love in the chat, welcome my dear friend, and you're going to find out why here in a moment, Brianna, onto our Zoom call for the month. Give her a big hand, please. And Brianna, I don't know if you're looking up at the Brady Bunch screen that I have in front of me, but I see a lot of thumbs up. I see a lot of people doing heart shapes. I see a lot of hugs and hearts going up in the Zoom chat. And this is before they even know your heart. So before I brag on you, your first friend was not me. It was actually Meredith. So Meredith, I'm going to let you do the formal introduction for Brianna.
Yes, I live for this. Um, I met Brianna years ago, right at the very beginning of COVID, because we live nearby each other and we shared a neighborhood Facebook page. Y'all got those where like people talk about whether their trash was taken out or what noise they heard in the middle of the night. I saw one that says, "I'm looking for a tutoring job. If anyone needs one, let me know." If you guys remember what it was probably like April of 2020. I was drowning trying to work and teach my kids, feeling ill-equipped to do that, and the idea that someone would throw out "Hey, I'm an educator and I want to take on the job of helping your kids get through this difficult time," like, that was angelic enough, but to think about someone who was going to be fighting their own fight all day long in a virtual classroom and then come over to my house on top of a million other things, it was just so special. And that was when I knew that Brie was really something cool in this world. And imagine my non-surprise when I found out that she doesn't just serve um, in her neighborhood or in her school, but she's just a person who looks for someone to care for every single place she goes. And she knows that she may not be able to solve the world's problems, but if the person in front of her can feel incrementally better about themselves, about their situation, about what's ahead of them, and the moment they share a space, then that's what she's going to do. And I just thought that was so special. And when I think of someone who's on fire for good, she immediately comes to mind.
Well, Bree, those are big shoes to fit. So, with that formal introduction being laid in front of us, here we are now with Brianna Morales joining us on the On Fire for Good call. These are some of the collage moments that she has been part of in her short but already illustrious and impactful career. And I had the opportunity of driving about 24 minutes away from my home, closer to where she works, into her own backyard. So, Brianna, where did we take this picture and what kind of school is it?
It was in the foyer of our school. I teach at Gordon Bush Alternative School, which is a disciplinary alternative school for students who have been expelled from their home schools in East St. Louis.
So let's talk about that. I mean, why don't we talk about why would you choose East St. Louis as the place where you want to do your work in the first place, and then why choose who some might consider the least among us to be where you ultimately want to do your best work?
Yeah, so I actually did service work when I was an undergrad in East St. Louis. I went to a really tiny Catholic liberal arts college in the middle of Iowa. I'm actually from Chicago, so if you asked me how I ended up at that college, I couldn't tell you, but it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me because I ended up finding my church group who I would go serve on trips during spring break. So all my friends were like partying in Florida, I was going on service trips, and one of the first places that I went was to East St. Louis. And so I thought that it was a really great trip when I originally went because I had gone through some really challenging times as a child. And then also throughout college, I was just looking for a place to be able to pour the same dignity and love that I had been shown in my life into a place that I felt like on the outside looked a lot like me, broken, but if someone cared to take a closer look, up close holds a lot of potential and promise. And so
Hmm.
I went back to teach in East St. Louis years later. And so it's like a full circle moment, I think, because I ended up right where I was supposed to be with students who remind me a lot of my younger self. And I think the reason why I'm motivated to stay in alternative ed is because that speaks to the underdog in all of us. You don't have to be a kid who got expelled from your school or whose neighborhood might not look, like East St. Louis to understand that each of us has been, maybe doubted by someone or overcome a lot of challenges in our life. And I feel like it's my life's work to be able to help my students to see that they can turn the page in their own lives.
I mean, dude, so we had coffee together a week and a half ago, and every single time I would ask her a question, I would feel like standing up and applauding. And then I would sit back down and ask her another question and feel the same way time after time after time. She's just this beautiful blend between ferocious wisdom and unconditional love. Like that, it's kind of an odd deal where it's like this toughness and wise, but this tenderness and this genteelness. And so you're going to learn a little bit more maybe about why. You and I talked candidly about some struggles I faced when I was a little kid. And then you were generous enough to share with me that I wasn't alone in those struggles and you dealt with your own in seventh grade. Would you talk about that?
Yeah. So I had a really traumatic childhood, and I think like those of us who end up in caring professions, right? Like the work that you do here, or healthcare work, education, social work, right? Work that speaks to the hearts of people. It's probably either because of or in spite of someone that we had in our life that kind of propelled us to be able to give back. And that's kind of my same story, that despite all of those struggles that I was going through, I had people who saw me through those moments. And so growing up, like I said, I had a lot of different changes really quickly as I moved into middle school. My biological dad like signed off his rights as my father. I ended up getting adopted by a step parent. We moved, going to a new school, losing all of my friends, and it just felt like life was really going at super speed, and no one stopped to ask me how I felt about it. And really, unfortunately, at the age of 12, when I was in the seventh grade, I attempted suicide, and I was in psychiatric, hospital for a little while. And when I ended up returning back to my school, I didn't know it at the time, and I learned very many years later. My seventh grade English teacher, who was helping me get through that so difficult time in my life, was also in the fight for her life as she was battling breast cancer at the exact same time, waking up every single day to come to school and have the courage to care for other people's children while she was trying to care for herself. And so she showed me how to write poetry as a way to get through those really hard times in my life and to translate it into something that other people could understand. And that is the same thing that I get to do with my own students as we write about their lives in my high school English class.
We're going through your life story that deserves a full feature film in a 12-minute recap. So I'm aware that we are fast forwarding, but as I look at the Brady Bunch on the screen right over your shoulder, I see people just moved. And it's hard for me to see them, not because they're little 1 inch by 1 inch boxes, but because there's moisture already in my eyes. This little girl who is wondering if, am I worthy? Does life even need me? And you try to take your life. And this one person who reaches out to you is also fighting for her life at the very same moment. And together you do this together. You get through seventh grade. You learn the value, the dignity of your life, the power of the written word. You ultimately move into education. You find yourself grounded in East St. Louis. Why does helping young people in East St. Louis who are on their final straw before they're kicked out of the educational system entirely, why does helping them learn how to write matter? Why is that something that's even worthy of anybody's time?
Because as you've dedicated your life to here in this space, I think it's to show kids that they have a story to tell and that someone out there needs to hear whatever story that is. I think half of the battle of being an English teacher is convincing kids that there is a story, that people are interested in hearing about them. And as teachers, it's not our job, right, to impress upon kids some type of sense of purpose. Every kid in front of us already has a sense of purpose. As teachers, it is our moral responsibility to uncover that sense of purpose so that it is made real for those kids and give them the tools to do something with it. And I think that writing is a great way that we do that in my class.
You become the Illinois Teacher of the Year. Illinois is a relatively large state. Our dear friends in Chicago populate a large portion of it. But here comes this teacher roaring in from East St. Louis, right across the waterfront from me. Congratulations to you. You had an opportunity, though, of bringing a couple guests in to celebrate this award with you. One was a little bit older than you, one was a little bit younger than you. Would you share with me who you brought?
Yeah, when I was named a finalist for Illinois Teacher of the Year, they bring all the finalists who are in the running together in a central location. And I reached out to my seventh grade English teacher after I hadn't spoken to her or lived in or around Chicago in 16 years. I was 28 years old when I was nominated as Illinois Teacher of the Year. And they all joined with me at the Teacher of the Year banquet. And that picture that's in the middle, up at the top there with me in the blue dress, that's all of my students who rode a bus 2.5 hours away from East St. Louis to be there to celebrate me being named Illinois Teacher of the Year. And they got to meet my seventh grade English teacher who responded to a completely unhinged email from me in the middle of the night after I found her like on a Google. And I said, hey, like, I was this kid in your seventh grade English class, and like, I wouldn't even be a teacher if it wasn't because of you. But even more importantly, I'm here to talk about my life because of you. So I was just hoping that you would care enough about me to drive 2.5 hours away for a ceremony in celebration of me. And she was there. And so I think it was the most beautiful thing because she also got to meet one of my former students who is now becoming a teacher because of me.
Mm. Right. It's so good. I'm so grateful for the work you do and the work she did, and now the work your students going to do for those behind them. This is the call of life, not to be keyboard champions yelling out at people we disagree with, but to be loving the one in front of us. Just loving the one in front of us. Brianna, you do it brilliantly. And there's so many stories like this that we could share from. Demaya, talk to me about who she is and how she impacted your life and what you're doing now with that legacy.
Yeah, so when I was named finalist for Illinois Teacher of the Year, well, I actually was at like a crossroads in my life. I actually wanted to walk away from education. I was planning on leaving teaching because I was named a finalist for Illinois Teacher of the Year just 2 months before or 2 months after one of my favorite students passed away in a tragic car accident where she and her two children, who were 2 and 3 years old at the time, were ejected from the car, and everyone survived but her. And so, in my 8 years of teaching in East St. Louis, I have lost over a dozen students to gun violence. And so, senseless violence is all around us in this world. But for something like a car accident, right, so uncharacteristic of anything that we were expecting, to just happen and to just take away any young person's life who has everything ahead of them. I didn't know what I was going to do or how I was going to go on because none of it really seemed to matter when this kid that I had such a close relationship with wasn't going to be there to see any of it. And so, like I said, I was planning to leave education. And so, just 2 months after that, exactly 4 months to the day of her passing, the Illinois State Superintendent, Tony Sanders, surprised me at my school to tell me, Brianna Morales, you're the 2023 Illinois Teacher of the Year. And when I got up to the podium, you can probably search this on Facebook Live because there was a video of it posted by the Illinois State Board of Education. The very first thing that I said when I got up to the podium was like, man, I wish that she could see this because every teacher is some kid's biggest fan out there, but she was my biggest fan. And we were so close. And I was only ever a few years younger or older than my students when I first started teaching. I teach students who are like 17, 18, 19 years old. So those of you who are teachers and you started teaching at 21, you understand what I'm saying. They're a little too old to be my kids, right? And so I oftentimes called her my younger sister because she was the same age as one of my youngest siblings. And so that sisterhood that we shared in over the years that I was her teacher and then tied us together even after graduation, I thought, in the grief that I'm feeling after her passing, and now as Illinois Teacher of the Year, I got a year-long sabbatical from teaching. What am I going to do with it? And the very first thing that I thought was I want to be able to honor her life in a way that I feel like speaks to what we were able to experience and to give that to other kids in a way that maybe they don't experience. And so in July of 2023, I founded Sisterhood of Hope, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that offers individual mentoring and positive youth development to high school girls of color in East St. Louis and Chicago. And we've worked with 6 different high schools across the state of Illinois, and we were actually featured on the Drew Barrymore show that fall. So hilariously, you can find that clip as well to share her story about what it meant to be her teacher and to talk about her life. Because I think in the grief that I felt, that's how I kept going, was thinking about her life. Demaya died, but she also lived. She lived a beautiful life where people, just like all of you, poured into her because they saw her for who she was and had faith in who she might become one day. And people like that are needed for all of our children. It's not just little girls like Brianna or girls like Demaya. All of our kids deserve that. You'll never be in front of a young person who doesn't. So it's now the end of our second program year, and we've reached even more girls across the state of Illinois, and we're looking forward to doing it many more years to come.
So you and I talked about this when we were together, eating Dunkin' Donuts, drinking coffee, celebrating life in East St. Louis, which was a joy for me to be part of that with you. Our organization is going to be making a contribution to your worthy organization. And for those that want to learn more about it, Meredith is going to type it into the chat right now. We'll send it out afterwards for folks to follow your work. But I just remind us collectively, like, the little things we do for those around us can have a profound effect. Just ask Brianna. An ordinary 7th grade teacher reached down and saw beauty where few did. And because of that, a decade and a half later, You and I, if you're on this call still, if I haven't yet rocked you to sleep, have been deeply inspired by the work and the mission and the faith, the light of someone on this call. The little things we do for others aren't. So let's collectively do a little thing today. For those right now listening to our conversation as we get ready to wrap up and go do mighty things in the world, if I, listening to you and I speaking right now, are thinking, gosh, I love her story, I love her heart, but I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too poor, I'm too rich, I'm too talented, or I don't have enough talents to make a difference, where would you encourage us to begin? Like what's one thing we can begin doing to stretch ourselves a bit to recognize there's a need out there in the world that we can help fit?
I think the best thing to do is to look to your neighbors. That's how Meredith and I met. That's also how I became part of a larger community who has cared for my students over years, was talking to my neighbors and seeing the person next door to our left and to our right in our backyards, right in our front yards, like who is around us that could benefit from anything that we have to give. And that could be monetary, that could just be our physical resource of being present and listening, giving of our heart in whatever way we can, because that's what helps everyone turn the page.
My friends, we're going to have a little chat right now as we wrap this conversation up with one of my heroes. Her name is Brianna Morales. She is the Illinois Teacher of the Year. I want you to think for a moment about what gifts you want to share this week. How do you want to show up for a student or a spouse or someone, Jeff at Funeral Directors Life, or someone, Kim at Southwest, or Raylene for a loved one, or Lisa Kent, or Cheryl Meyer, Mary Jones, Chuck Meadows? How do you want to show up for someone? How do you want to be a gift in their life? So I'm going to give you a moment just to think about recognizing that the distractions in life might be drawing you to the important. So how do you want to be used this week? How do you want to be a gift for someone else? If you want to type it into the chat, I'd love to read it. If you want to just sit there for a little bit as we get ready to wrap up this call and live it afterwards, feel free. But Meredith, how do you respond to that as we get ready to put a bow on this month's episode?
I mean, one of the reasons I found Brianna so inspiring all these years is not her excellence in the classroom, although that's remarkable. It's the way she just looks right into someone else's struggle, and rather than avert her eyes or think about all the things that are going on in her life, it's like, what can I do right in this moment? And I just, of all of the people that we've talked to and our search for people that are on fire for good, they share this characteristic, which is it's not our job to go through life perfectly and have the perfect solution to everyone's problems. Sometimes it's like, I think I know a guy who has the mattress you need for the foster kid that you're welcome into your house, or I've got a car and I can transport that mattress, or you need a ride somewhere, I can take you. Like it's, we're not seeking perfection here. What Bree does so beautifully, and what we all know on this call, John does as well, and what I know from getting to know so many of you, is that it's about turning to the person next to you, using our human intuition to get a sense of what's needed, even if all that's needed is a smile or a hug, and doing that thing, and then rinsing and repeating until we're on the other side of the dirt, as John likes to say sometimes. And we're getting so many of some really special answers here. Everything from showing up fully, to giving away your beautiful smile, to not letting interruptions get in the way of helping others, to love a stranger, to be a good listener, to demonstrate encouragement and compassion. Robert Shielsley said that he mentored at Mercy Home for Boys in Chicago for 5 years, just made a donation to Sisterhood of Hope. Thank you, Robert. I know Brianna thanks you too. Um, and mentioned your name. God bless you for the work that you do. I mean, even if that's all we did after this call is to help support the helpers,
Mm.
that's something. So whatever you've typed in, whether it's be more attentive to your wife, like Bob says, or helping his mom move into an assisted living facility, like David Jones says, like do it fully and the way Brianna would do it. That's what I'm going to do.
Anne Maloney is going to get more sleep. And if it
Okay.
stops there, you're like, Anne, I don't think you were listening to the call entirely. But she said that because in doing so, she'll be far nicer to those she encounters. So, Anne, I'm looking forward to encountering you later this month. I'm excited about our event together, so I'm looking forward to it. And Laura Chanley, you're gonna get the last text word in. Here we go. To just do for others. Oh, gosh, now you're jumping all over the place. To just do for others, and to uh, and not say call me if you need a thing. Right on. To just do for others and not say call me if you need a thing. Well, thank you for that, Laura. And thank you for it, friends. Let's talk about landing the plane right now safely. If you ever have a heart to nominate someone who is grateful for what they have, joyful in all that they do, and making a mighty difference in a marketplace, longing for it. The little things and the big things both add up. You can go to our website. It's called onfireforgood.com. It's a wonderful place to learn more about the work we do around here, the monthly calls we do around here, but also the people we get to celebrate and lift up around here. So if you've never done it, check it out today. Let us know who you want to lift up and celebrate. We'll have them on a future call, we hope. Speaking of future calls, our next gathering will be April 7th at 4 o'clock Central Standard Time. We're looking forward to having a little bit of warmer weather at that point. It's going to be a wonderful season to gather again and be reminded that life is not perfect this side of eternity, but it is good. There are people like Brianna Morales walking around us. We have a call to be like that for others. The headwind is real, but the best is yet to come. So I want to thank you all for being part of our Live Inspired family. I'm grateful for you. I love you. We get to celebrate the work being done not only by Bree on these calls, but by you and me and all of us. So keep doing the great work. Meredith, thank you for all that you do to set up these calls. And as we wrap it up, my friends, just know that I'm grateful for you. I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. So for this time and until next time, my name is John O'Leary. Today is your day. What a gift. God bless and live inspired. See you next month.